When grieving billionaire Nicholas Trent hires Elijah Morgan, he expects another failed attempt at stability for his mute son. But one smile and one song change everything. Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The sun shone brightly over the sprawling Montecito estate as Nicholas Trent stared out his office window. At 42, he had everything money could buy: a successful tech company worth billions, a mansion with views of both mountains and ocean, and every luxury imaginable. But the one thing he couldn't purchase was his son's voice. Nicholas ran his hand through his dark hair, streaked with premature grey. The stress of the past 2 years had aged him beyond his years. His eyes fell on a silver-framed photo on his desk, a smiling woman with kind eyes and a little boy laughing in her arms. Hannah and Emmett, before everything changed. The intercom on his desk buzzed. "Mr. Trent, the agency called. The new housekeeper will be arriving within the hour." "Thank you, Mrs. Reynolds," Nicholas replied to his assistant. He hadn't wanted to hire someone new. The last 3 housekeepers had quit within weeks, unable to handle the silence that filled every room of the mansion, or worse, unable to handle Emmett's occasional meltdowns when his frustration became too much. But Mrs. Reynolds, who had been with him since before Hannah's death, had insisted. "You need help, Mr. Trent. This house is too big, and Emmett needs consistency when you're away on business." Nicholas couldn't argue with that. Since Hannah's car accident 2 years ago, Emmett hadn't spoken a single word. The diagnosis came 3 months later: selective mutism, triggered by trauma. The psychologists said it wasn't that Emmett couldn't speak, he simply wouldn't. Nicholas had brought in the best specialists money could buy. Therapists with waiting lists years long made house calls. Neurologists ran tests. Behavioral experts created treatment plans. Nothing worked. Eventually, Nicholas accepted it. The silence, the stillness, the way his once vibrant home had become a mausoleum of grief. He glanced at his watch. The new housekeeper would be here soon. He had reviewed her file: Elijah Morgan, 27, former early childhood educator. Good references. No red flags. Just another person who would probably be gone in a month. Elijah Morgan stared up at the iron gates of the Trent estate with a mixture of awe and anxiety. The taxi driver had whistled when she gave him the address. "That's tech royalty up there, honey," he'd said. "Good luck." Now, as the gates opened after she gave her name through the intercom, Elijah took a deep breath. This job was exactly what she needed. A fresh start, away from the whispers and stares back in New Jersey. Away from the lawsuit that had destroyed her teaching career. She adjusted her simple navy dress and pulled her suitcase up the long driveway. Elijah had expected a staff member to greet her, but instead, she found herself face to face with Nicholas Trent himself. He was taller than she expected, with broad shoulders and a stern expression that matched every magazine photo she'd seen of the reclusive billionaire. His eyes, a startling blue, assessed her quickly. "Ms. Morgan." His voice was deep but quiet, as if he too had grown accustomed to the silence of his home. "Yes, Mr. Trent. It's nice to meet you." She extended her hand, which he shook briefly. "Please come in." Mrs. Reynolds would normally show you around, but she had to leave early today. He stepped aside, allowing her to enter the vast marble foyer. The inside of the mansion was even more impressive than the outside. Soaring ceilings, museum-quality artwork, and windows that showcased the stunning California landscape. But despite its grandeur, Elijah immediately sensed something missing: warmth. "Your references were excellent," Nicholas said, as he led her through the main floor. "I should warn you that this position has been challenging for others." Elijah nodded. "Because of your son. I was told he has selective mutism." Nicholas's step faltered slightly. "Yes, Emmett is 6. He hasn't spoken in over 2 years since his mother passed away." "I'm very sorry for your loss," Elijah said quietly. Nicholas didn't acknowledge her sympathy. Instead, he continued walking, pointing out rooms with clinical efficiency. "Kitchen, dining room, library, my office, which is private. The East Wing has staff quarters, including your suite." Elijah tried to take it all in, but her mind kept returning to the little boy she had yet to meet. As a teacher, she had worked with children with various challenges. One of her students had selective mutism. She remembered the patience it had taken to create a safe space for him. "When will I meet Emmett?" she finally asked. Nicholas checked his watch. "He should be finishing his session with Dr. Martinez. I'll introduce you afterward." As if on cue, a door opened down the hallway, and a woman in a tailored suit emerged carrying a briefcase. She spoke quietly to Nicholas while Elia waited at a respectful distance. "No change," Elia overheard the woman say. "But these things take time." Nicholas nodded stiffly, his jaw tense. After the doctor left, he turned to Elia. "Emmett is in the playroom. I'll introduce you now." The playroom was a child's dream, filled with every toy imaginable, books, art supplies, and a small climbing wall. But the room felt untouched, as if the toys were merely decorative. In the corner, a small boy sat cross-legged on the floor, arranging colored blocks in perfect lines. His dark hair was neatly combed, and he wore a button-up shirt and khaki pants that made him look like a miniature businessman. "Emmett," Nicholas said gently, "there's someone I'd like you to meet." The boy didn't look up. His small hands continued methodically sorting blocks by color. Nicholas sighed. "This is Ms. Morgan. She's going to be helping around the house." Elia knelt down several feet away from Emmett, not wanting to crowd him. "Hi, Emmett. You can call me Elia. Those are beautiful blocks you have there." Emmett's hands paused for just a moment, but he still didn't look up. "Ms. Morgan will be preparing your meals and helping with your routine when I'm working," Nicholas explained, his voice softening when he spoke to his son, just like Mrs. Peterson did. Elia noticed how Nicholas spoke to Emmett normally, not with the high-pitched voice some adults used with children. She appreciated that. She also noticed the tension in the father's shoulders, the careful way he watched his son for any reaction. After a few more moments of silence, Nicholas straightened. "I'll leave you to get acquainted. Dinner is at 6. Emmett usually has chicken tenders, steamed carrots, and apple slices. The menu is on the refrigerator." With that, he left, his footsteps echoing in the quiet house. Elia stayed where she was, observing Emmett. She didn't try to force interaction or fill the silence with nervous chatter. Instead, she simply sat nearby, occasionally commenting on his block patterns. "I like how you organize the colors. That's very thoughtful." After about 20 minutes, she stood up. "I'm going to go unpack my things, Emmett. Then I'll start getting dinner ready. You're welcome to join me in the kitchen if you'd like, but it's okay if you want to stay here too." As she turned to leave, she felt a tug on her dress. Emmett stood beside her, his dark blue eyes so like his father's, looking up at her face for the first time. He didn't smile or speak, but he didn't pull away when she gently placed her hand on his shoulder. "Would you like to show me where the kitchen is?" she asked. Emmett turned and walked to the door, then paused, waiting for her to follow. Nicholas retreated to his office, loosening his tie as he closed the door behind him. Meeting new staff was always draining. He'd learned to keep his expectations low, especially when it came to Emmett. He pulled up his calendar on his computer. 3 video conferences tomorrow, then a flight to New York on Thursday for meetings that couldn't be handled remotely. He'd have to tell Ms. Morgan about the trip. His mother would come stay with Emmett while he was gone, as she always did. The thought made him grimace. Eleanor Trent meant well, but her approach to Emmett's condition was all wrong. She treated him like he was deliberately being difficult, constantly urging him to just try to speak. Nicholas's phone buzzed with a text from his mother. "How's the new help? Will she last longer than the last one?" He didn't bother responding. Instead, he pulled up Ms. Morgan's application again. Elia Morgan had impressive credentials for a housekeeper, a degree in early childhood education, 5 years of teaching experience. So why was she working as household staff? The employment agency had assured him that Ms. Morgan came highly recommended, despite a career change that they were vague about. Perhaps he should have dug deeper, but at this point, he was desperate for someone who could handle the silence of his home without filling it with mindless chatter or, worse, pity. Hours later, Nicholas emerged from his office to find the house smelling of something delicious. He followed the scent to the kitchen, where he stopped short at the doorway. Emmett was sitting at the kitchen island, watching as Elia prepared dinner. More surprisingly, he was engaged, his eyes following her movements as she talked softly while working. "And then we add just a little bit of honey to the carrots," she was saying. "My grandma taught me that trick. Makes them extra tasty." Nicholas cleared his throat, and Elia looked up with a warm smile. "Dinner will be ready in 5 minutes, Mr. Trent. Emmett has been keeping me company." Nicholas glanced at his son, who was now looking down at his hands. "That's unusual. He typically stays in his room until dinner is served." Elia's smile didn't falter. "We've been having a nice time getting to know each other, haven't we, Emmett?" Emmett didn't respond, but he didn't leave either, which Nicholas found remarkable. "I've prepared chicken for Emmett as you requested," Elia continued, "and I made a herb-roasted chicken and quinoa salad for you, if that's acceptable. I noticed some fresh herbs in the garden and thought they shouldn't go to waste." "That's fine," Nicholas replied, taken aback. The previous housekeepers had stuck rigidly to the meal plans Mrs. Reynolds created. "You cook as well?" "I enjoy it," Alaya said simply. "My mother always said a house doesn't feel like a home without good food." Something in her tone, warm, unpretentious, made Nicholas pause. There was no artificial cheerfulness, no walking on eggshells around Emmett's condition. Just a natural ease that felt out of place in his sterile home. Dinner was a quiet affair, but not uncomfortably so. Nicholas found himself watching Alaya interact with Emmett. She didn't force conversation, but spoke to him normally about her day, asking simple questions that required no verbal response. "Do you like the carrots with honey?" she asked Emmett, who gave a small nod. Another surprise. After dinner, Nicholas retreated to his office again, while Alaya handled Emmett's bedtime routine. Later, as he was reviewing contracts, a soft knock came at his door. "Come in," he called. Alaya entered, looking slightly hesitant. "Emmett is asleep, Mr. Trent. He had his bath and we read a story. I hope that was okay." "Of course. That's part of your duties." Nicholas set down his tablet. "Was there something else?" "I noticed a guitar in the music room while I was exploring the house earlier. Does anyone play?" The question caught him off guard. "My wife did. Hannah was musical." Alaya nodded. "I see. Well, I just wanted to let you know that everything went smoothly today. Is there anything special I should know about tomorrow's routine?" Nicholas appreciated her directness. "I have video conferences all day tomorrow. Mrs. Reynolds will be here at 8 to assist me. Emmett has tutoring at 10 with Mr. Blake. Otherwise, the regular schedule is on the refrigerator." "Perfect. Then I'll say good night." She turned to leave, then paused. "Mr. Trent, thank you for this opportunity. I know having someone new in your home isn't easy." Before Nicholas could respond, she was gone, closing the door quietly behind her. He sat back in his chair, puzzled by the interaction. There was something different about Alaya Morgan, a genuineness that stood out in a world where most people either wanted something from him or treated him with careful deference because of his wealth. And Emmett had responded to her. Not dramatically, but those small nods, the way he'd followed her to the kitchen. They were more interaction than he'd shown with any previous housekeeper. Nicholas tried to temper his hope. He'd learned the hard way that progress with Emmett came in microscopic steps, often followed by heartbreaking regression. Still, as he prepared for bed that night, he found himself thinking about Alaya's question about the guitar. No one had touched Hannah's guitar since she died. Perhaps it was time to open the music room again. Alaya settled into her suite in the east wing of the mansion. The space was larger than her entire apartment back in New Jersey, a bedroom with a king-sized bed, a sitting area with plush furniture, and a bathroom with a shower and separate soaking tub. She unpacked her modest belongings, arranging photos on the dresser. One showed her with her sister Bree, both laughing at a family barbecue. Another was of her classroom from 2 years ago before everything fell apart. As she got ready for bed, Alaya's phone chimed with a text from Bree. "How's the mansion? Have you met the billionaire yet? Is he as hot as his pictures?" Alaya rolled her eyes but smiled as she texted back, "Yes, I've met him. The house is beautiful but sad. The little boy hasn't spoken in 2 years." Bree's response came quickly. "That's awful. Poor kid. But how's the dad? People magazine had him on their most eligible list last year." "He's my boss, Bree, and he's grieving. Don't be inappropriate." "Just saying, might be a nice bonus to working in a mansion." Alaya didn't dignify that with a response. Instead, she sent, "Gotta sleep. Big day tomorrow. Love you." She set her phone aside and climbed into the luxurious bed, her mind on Emmett. There had been a moment today, while they were in the kitchen, when she thought he might speak. He'd opened his mouth, then closed it again, his eyes darting away. Her training had taught her that children with selective mutism needed patience above all else. No pressure, no expectations, just consistent safety and acceptance. Alaya's thoughts drifted to Nicholas. His grief was palpable, like another presence in the house. She recognized it because she'd carried her own grief for the past year, not for a person, but for her career, her confidence, her trust in herself. The lawsuit had blindsided her. Parents claiming she'd been negligent when their son was injured on the playground. The school district settling rather than fighting, despite evidence that she'd followed all protocols. The whispers from colleagues. The news articles that painted her as incompetent. She'd left teaching because she no longer trusted herself around children. Now here she was, responsible for a vulnerable child again. As sleep began to claim her, Alaya made a promise to herself. She would be careful, professional. She wouldn't get too attached to Emmett or his father. This job was just a stepping stone, a way to rebuild her savings and her confidence before she figured out what to do next. But somewhere deep inside, she knew it might not be that simple. On her third day at the Trent mansion, Alaya made a discovery. Nicholas had left early for meetings in the city. Emmett had finished his lessons with the tutor, who reported to Alaya that the boy had been attentive but uncommunicative, as usual. After lunch, while Emmett was having quiet time in his room, Alaya decided to explore more of the mansion. She'd already familiarized herself with the main living areas, but there were rooms she hadn't entered yet. One door at the end of the west hallway was unlocked. When Alaya pushed it open, she found herself in a beautiful room with large windows overlooking the garden. A grand piano stood in one corner, and along the walls were display cases containing various instruments, flutes, violins, and a beautiful acoustic guitar. The room had the feel of a space that had once been well used, but was now preserved like a museum exhibit. There was no dust. The housekeeping service saw to that, but there was a stillness that spoke of absence. Alaya was about to leave when she heard a small sound behind her. Turning, she saw Emmett standing in the doorway, watching her with those solemn blue eyes. "Hello, Emmett," she said with a smile. "I was just exploring. Is this the music room?" Emmett walked past her and straight to the display case with the guitar. He stood in front of it, staring. "Did your mum play that?" Alaya asked gently. To her surprise, Emmett nodded. Then, even more surprisingly, he pointed at the case, then at her. "You want me to open it?" Alaya asked. Another nod. Alaya hesitated. Nicholas hadn't specifically said the music room was off limits, but given its connection to his late wife, she wasn't sure if she should be disturbing anything. But Emmett was looking at her expectantly, the most animation she'd seen from him yet. "Okay," she decided. "Let's take a look." She carefully opened the display case and lifted out the guitar. It was a beautiful instrument, clearly expensive. She carried it to a small sofa in the center of the room and sat down. "Would you like to see it?" she asked Emmett. He came closer, his eyes fixed on the guitar. Slowly he reached out and plucked one of the strings. The note resonated in the quiet room. Alaya smiled. "That's the D string. Do you want to try another one?" Emmett plucked another string, then another. His face remained serious, but there was something in his eyes, a spark of interest. "Your mom must have been very talented," Alaya said. "My dad played guitar too. He taught me a little when I was about your age." She positioned the guitar in her lap and strummed a simple chord. The sound seemed to fill the room with life. Emmett sat down beside her, watching her fingers on the strings. Alaya played a few more chords, then a simple melody. She wasn't particularly skilled, but she could manage basic songs. Without thinking too much about it, she began to beatbox softly along with her playing, a habit she'd picked up years ago when teaching music to her kindergarten students. It was silly, especially in this elegant room, but the unexpected sound made Emmett look up at her face. And then, a miracle. The corner of his mouth twitched upward, not quite a smile, but close. Encouraged, Alaya continued, adding more elaborate beatbox sounds to her simple playing. The contrast was ridiculous, her making goofy sounds in this sophisticated music room, but it felt right. This time Emmett definitely smiled. It was small and brief, but undeniable. Alaya's heart soared, but she kept her reaction muted, not wanting to make a big deal and possibly cause him to retreat. Instead, she simply said, "Would you like to try?" She held out the guitar. After a moment's hesitation, Emmett took it, struggling a bit with its size. Alaya helped him position it and guided his small fingers to the strings. "Just pluck any string you want," she encouraged. "There's no wrong way to explore music." For the next 20 minutes they sat together in the music room, Emmett experimenting with the guitar while Alaya occasionally added her beatbox sounds, which reliably produced that hint of a smile. Neither of them noticed Nicholas standing in the doorway, briefcase still in hand, having returned early from his meetings. He watched in stunned silence as his son, his silent, withdrawn son, smiled for the first time in 2 years. And it wasn't the guitar that had done it. It was the woman beside him, with her ridiculous beatboxing and her gentle patience. Something about her had reached Emmett in a way that all the expensive specialists had failed to do. Nicholas quietly backed away from the door, not wanting to interrupt the moment. His heart pounded with a mixture of hope and something else he couldn't quite name, something he hadn't felt in a very long time. Perhaps, just perhaps, Alaya Morgan was exactly what they needed. Nicholas sat in his office that evening, unable to focus on work. The image of Emmett smiling kept replaying in his mind. It had been so long since he'd seen his son show any emotion. The specialists had warned him that prolonged selective mutism could lead to emotional flatness. a defense mechanism to avoid the pressure of speaking. But today, in that music room with Alaya, Emmett had smiled. Nicholas closed his laptop and leaned back in his chair. He should be thrilled, and part of him was, but another part felt something unexpected, jealousy. It hadn't been him who brought that smile to his son's face. It had been a woman who'd been in their lives for only 3 days. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. "Come in," he called. Alaya entered with a cup of tea. "I thought you might like this. You've been working late." The gesture caught him off guard. "Thank you, Miss Morgan. That's thoughtful. Please call me Alaya." She set the tea on his desk. "I hope you don't mind, but Emmett and I spent some time in the music room today." Nicholas nodded, not revealing that he'd seen them. "I noticed the guitar was moved. I'm sorry if that was overstepping." Emmett seemed interested, and I thought, "It's fine," Nicholas interrupted. "Hannah would have wanted the instruments to be used, not just displayed." Alaya seemed to relax slightly. "Emmett has a good ear for rhythm." He was very engaged. Nicholas took a sip of the tea, chamomile with honey, exactly how he liked it, though he couldn't remember telling her his preference. "You have a way with him. He seems comfortable with you." "Children usually respond well when they don't feel pressured," Alaya said. "Sometimes just being present with them, accepting them exactly as they are, is all they need." "The specialists have said the same thing," Nicholas admitted. "It's easier said than done." Alaya's eyes softened with understanding. It must be incredibly difficult, wanting so much to help him, and not knowing how. There was no pity in her voice, just genuine empathy. Nicholas found himself wanting to confide in her, which was unusual. He rarely discussed Emmett's condition with anyone outside of medical professionals. After Hannah died, he found himself saying, "I thought I could fix it. That's what I do. I solve problems, but this," he gestured vaguely, "I can't fix this." "You can't fix grief," Alaya said gently. "You can only move through it. Emmett is finding his way just like you are." Nicholas stared at her, struck by her insight. "You sound like you speak from experience." A shadow crossed her face. "I've had my own losses, different from yours, but yes." Before he could ask more, she straightened. "I should let you get back to work. Emmett is asleep. He had his bath and story. Good night, Mr. Trent." "Nicholas," he corrected her. "If I'm calling you Alaya, you should call me Nicholas." She smiled, and for a moment, he was struck by how beautiful she was when she smiled. "Good night, Nicholas." After she left, Nicholas sat with his tea thinking about their conversation. There was more to Alaya Morgan than he'd initially assumed. What losses had she experienced? Why had a talented teacher ended up working as household staff? His phone buzzed with a text from his mother. "Reminder that I'll be there Thursday when you leave for New York. Is the new girl working out, or should I start interviewing replacements?" Nicholas sighed. His mother had never approved of his revolving door of hired help, as she called it. She believed Emmett needed family, not strangers. Specifically, she believed he needed her, his grandmother, to take charge. "Her name is Alaya," he texted back. "And yes, she's working out fine. More than fine, actually." But he wasn't ready to share Emmett's smile with anyone yet, not even his mother. That moment felt fragile, precious, like a soap bubble that might burst if examined too closely. The next morning, Nicholas delayed his departure for the office, lingering over breakfast. Emmett sat at the table, methodically eating his oatmeal with blueberries arranged in a perfect circle. Alaya moved efficiently around the kitchen, packing Emmett's lunch for his tutor session. "I've laid out your blue sweater for after your lessons, Emmett," she said. "It's a bit cooler today. We could go for a walk in the garden if you'd like." Emmett nodded, his eyes following her movements. Nicholas watched them, struck by how Alaya spoke to Emmett, not down to him like a baby, not with forced cheerfulness, but with simple respect, and Emmett responded to it in his silent way. "Alaya," Nicholas said, setting down his coffee. "I'm leaving for New York tomorrow. I'll be gone for 3 days. My mother will be staying here with Emmett." Alaya looked up. "I see. Will I be assisting her with Emmett's care?" "No, Nicholas hesitated. "My mother prefers to handle things her way. But you'll continue with the household duties." Something flashed in Alaya's eyes. Understanding, perhaps. "Of course. My mother can be particular," Nicholas added, feeling an unexpected need to prepare her. "She means well." Alaya smiled. "I'm sure we'll get along fine. Don't worry about things here. Just focus on your meetings." But Nicholas did worry. His mother had driven away more than one staff member with her exacting standards and her firm beliefs about how Emmett should be raised. Eleanor Trent was loving but controlling, a combination that had been challenging even when Hannah was alive. After breakfast, Nicholas knelt beside Emmett's chair. "I have to go to work now, buddy. I'll see you at dinner." Emmett looked at him with those solemn blue eyes, Hannah's eyes, and nodded. Nicholas resisted the urge to push for more, to plead for a word, a smile, anything. Instead, he squeezed his son's shoulder gently and stood. "I'll walk you out," Alaya said, following him to the door. In the foyer, Nicholas turned to her. "If there's any problem while I'm in New York, call me directly. Not my assistant, not my mother. Me." He handed her a business card with his personal cell number written on the back. Alaya took the card, their fingers brushing momentarily. "I will, but I'm sure everything will be fine." Nicholas found himself studying her face, the warm brown of her eyes, the curve of her cheek, the way her braids were arranged in a neat bun at the nape of her neck. She was lovely in an unassuming way, without any of the artificial enhancement so common among the women in his social circle. "Thank you," he said, suddenly awkward, "for yesterday, for the music room. It was significant." Her smile was warm. "Emmett is an amazing child. It's a privilege to spend time with him." As Nicholas drove to his office, he found himself more relaxed than he'd been in months. For the first time since Hannah's death, he felt like maybe, just maybe, things might get better. Eleanor Trent arrived the next morning like a perfectly tailored hurricane. At 68, she was a striking woman with silver hair cut in an expensive bob, impeccable makeup, and the kind of posture that came from a lifetime of dance lessons and social expectations. "Nicholas, darling," she said, air-kissing both his cheeks. "You look tired. Are you sleeping enough?" "I'm fine, Mother," Nicholas replied, taking her designer luggage from the driver. "Thank you for staying with Emmett." "As if I would let anyone else do it." Eleanor swept into the house, her critical gaze immediately assessing everything. "Where is my grandson? And the new housekeeper? Alicia, was it?" "Alaya," Nicholas corrected. "And Emmett is having breakfast in the kitchen." Eleanor made a disapproving noise. "In the kitchen? Why not the dining room?" "Because he likes the kitchen," Nicholas said, trying to keep the edge out of his voice. "It's more comfortable for him." Eleanor pursed her lips, but didn't argue further. Instead, she moved toward the kitchen with purposeful strides. Emmett was sitting at the island, eating toast with jam. Alaya stood nearby, preparing a fruit salad. She looked up as Eleanor entered. "You must be Mrs. Trent," Alaya said with a warm smile. "It's a pleasure to meet you. I'm Alaya Morgan." Eleanor gave her a cool once-over. "Yes, the new girl. Nicholas mentioned you." She turned her attention to Emmett. "And there's my precious boy. Grandma has missed you so much." She swooped down on Emmett, who immediately tensed. Eleanor didn't seem to notice as she pressed kisses to his forehead and cheeks, leaving lipstick marks that she then tried to wipe away with her thumb. "Mother," Nicholas said quietly, seeing Emmett's discomfort. "Remember what Dr. Patel said about overwhelming him?" Eleanor straightened, smoothing her already smooth hair. "Nonsense. A grandmother's love is never overwhelming." But she did step back slightly. "Now, what's the plan for today? Have you packed for your trip? Did you remember your medications?" "Everything's taken care of," Nicholas assured her. "Alaya has Emmett's schedule, and Mrs. Reynolds will be available if you need anything." Eleanor turned to Alaya. "I won't need assistance with my grandson, thank you. I raised Nicholas on my own after his father died, and he turned out quite well, as you can see." Alaya's expression remained pleasant. "Of course, I'll focus on my household duties. Would you like coffee, Mrs. Trent, or tea?" "Coffee black," Eleanor replied, then turned back to Nicholas. "When does your flight leave?" As Nicholas went over the details of his trip with his mother, he couldn't help but notice Alaya quietly wiping the lipstick marks from Emmett's face with a damp cloth, her touch gentle. Emmett allowed it, his body relaxing, as she whispered something that made him almost smile again. A complicated feeling twisted in Nicholas's chest, gratitude mixed with envy. How easily Alaya seemed to understand his son, when he himself still struggled after 2 years of trying. Finally, it was time for him to leave. He hugged Emmett goodbye, reminded his mother about Emmett's routine, and thanked Alaya again for her help. As his driver pulled away from the house, Nicholas had the strangest urge to turn around, to cancel his trip and stay home. It made no sense. His mother had stayed with Emmett dozens of times. Everything would be fine. But as the mansion disappeared from view, Nicholas couldn't shake the feeling that something important was going to happen while he was gone. The atmosphere in the house changed dramatically after Nicholas left. Eleanor immediately began rearranging things, moving Emmett's activities to the formal dining room, insisting he change into proper clothes instead of the comfortable outfit Alaya had laid out, and scheduling phone calls with friends during what would normally be Emmett's quiet time. Alaya kept her distance, focusing on her cleaning and meal preparation, but she couldn't help noticing Emmet's increasing tension. By lunchtime, his hands were fidgeting constantly, and he had that distant look that often preceded what Nicholas called a shutdown, when Emmet would retreat so far into himself that he became completely unresponsive. As Eleanor talked on the phone while picking at her salad, Emmet pushed his plate away untouched. "Emmet, darling, you must eat," Eleanor said, covering the phone's microphone. "Growing boys need proper nutrition." Emmet stared at his lap, his shoulders hunched. Alaya, who was refreshing the water pitcher, spoke up. "Mrs. Trent, perhaps Emmet would like to eat in the kitchen. Sometimes a change of scene helps." Eleanor frowned. "Certainly not. We're having a proper family lunch. Emmet, sit up straight. Your father may allow these slouching habits, but Grandma expects better." Alaya saw the warning signs. Emmet's quickened breathing, the way his hands clenched and unclenched. She'd seen similar behavior in her classroom from overwhelmed children. "Mrs. Trent," she tried again, "I think Emmet might need a break." "What he needs," Eleanor said firmly, "is structure and expectations. That's what will help him overcome this phase." But it was too late. Emmet suddenly slid from his chair and crawled underneath the dining table, his hands over his ears, rocking slightly. Eleanor sighed dramatically. "Oh, Emmet, really? This behavior is exactly why you're not improving. Come out from under there this instant." Alaya knelt down, making eye contact with Emmet. His eyes were wide with distress. "It's okay," she said softly. "You're okay, Emmet. Would you like to go to your quiet space?" Emmet nodded frantically. "He needs to learn to manage his emotions, not run from them," Eleanor insisted, standing over them. "Nicholas coddles him too much. That's why he hasn't spoken in 2 years." Alaya bit her tongue to keep from responding. Instead, she held out her hand to Emmet. "Let's take a break. We can try lunch again later." Emmet took her hand and crawled out from under the table. "This is exactly why he needs family, not hired help," Eleanor said, her voice sharp. "You're undermining his progress by enabling this behavior." Alaya finally turned to face the older woman. "With all due respect, Mrs. Trent, Emmet is showing signs of sensory overload. His doctors have recommended giving him space when this happens. I'm following the protocol your son established." Eleanor's eyes narrowed. "I see Nicholas has filled your head with modern nonsense. In my day, children didn't have sensory overload, they had discipline. Times change, Mrs. Trent. So does our understanding of children's needs." Eleanor drew herself up to her full height. "I'll be discussing this with Nicholas. I'm not comfortable with your attitude or your approach to my grandson's care." "That's your right," Alaya said calmly. "In the meantime, I'm going to help Emmet calm down. Excuse us." She led Emmet from the dining room, feeling Eleanor's glare on her back. It wasn't the first time she'd stood up to a difficult parent or grandparent, but it was the first time she'd done so in a job where she could be fired on the spot. Still, she couldn't regret it. Emmet's well-being came first. In his bedroom, Alaya helped Emmet settle into his weighted blanket, a tool the occupational therapist had recommended. She put on soft instrumental music and sat nearby, not speaking, just providing a calming presence. Gradually, Emmet's breathing slowed. The tension drained from his small body. "You're doing great, Emmet," Alaya said softly. "Taking a break when you need one is smart. Your body was telling you it needed quiet, and you listened." Emmet looked at her with those deep blue eyes, then slowly reached out and patted her hand, a gesture of gratitude that brought tears to Alaya's eyes. "You're welcome," she whispered. That evening, after Emmet was asleep, Eleanor cornered Alaya in the kitchen. "I've been looking into your background," she said without preamble. "You left your teaching position under questionable circumstances." Alaya's heart sank, but she kept her expression neutral as she loaded the dishwasher. "I resigned from my position last year, yes. After a lawsuit from parents claiming negligence," Eleanor pressed, "a child was injured under your supervision." Alaya closed the dishwasher and straightened to face Eleanor. "The lawsuit was settled by the school district. I followed all proper protocols, but sometimes accidents happen. Accidents that end teaching careers," Eleanor observed. "Did Nicholas know about this when he hired you?" "The agency has my full employment history. I assume they shared relevant information with him." Eleanor's smile was cold. "I doubt they emphasized your failure to keep a child safe. Nicholas is so desperate for help with Emmet that he didn't do his due diligence." The accusation stung, but Alaya refused to show it. "Mrs. Trent, I understand your concern for your grandson, but I assure you Emmet is safe with me." "Is he? A woman who couldn't protect one child, now responsible for another. a particularly vulnerable one. Alaya took a deep breath. What happened at my school was tragic. A child fell from playground equipment while I was helping another student. I've replayed that moment countless times, wondering what I could have done differently. To her surprise, her voice didn't shake. Perhaps because after a year of self-recrimination, she'd finally started to accept that she couldn't have prevented the accident. I loved teaching, she continued. I was good at it. But the lawsuit, the way it was handled, the things that were said, it broke something in me. I couldn't go back into a classroom without paralyzing fear that I'd fail another child. Eleanor seemed taken aback by her honesty. Then why take a job caring for a child again? Why Emmett? Because the agency called with this opportunity, and I needed work, Alaya said simply. But since meeting Emmett, he reminds me why I became a teacher in the first place. Children like him, who need someone to truly see them, to be patient with them. Eleanor studied her for a long moment. You care about him already. It wasn't a question, but Alaya answered anyway. Yes, I do. That's dangerous, Eleanor said, but her tone had softened slightly. Caring too much for a child who isn't yours. With respect, Mrs. Trent, I think children need as many people caring about them as possible, especially children who are hurting. Eleanor looked away, and for a brief moment, Alaya glimpsed the pain beneath the older woman's controlled exterior. Hannah's death destroyed Nicholas. And Emmett, he just shut down. I've tried everything to bring him back. I know you have, Alaya said gently, because you love him. Of course I do. Eleanor straightened her shoulders, which is why I won't apologize for being protective. If Nicholas won't properly vet the people around my grandson, I will. I understand, Alaya said, and I'm not offended by your questions. I would do the same in your position. Eleanor gave her an appraising look. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? Someone less formidable. Eleanor picked up her teacup. I still don't approve of how you undermine my authority with Emmett, but perhaps you're not entirely wrong about his needs. Coming from Eleanor, it was practically an apology. Alaya accepted it with a nod. Thank you. And for what it's worth, I believe your presence is important to Emmett. He needs his family. Eleanor's expression softened further. Yes, well, we'll see how tomorrow goes. Good night, Miss Morgan. Good night, Mrs. Trent. As Eleanor left the kitchen, Alaya let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. The confrontation had gone better than expected, but Eleanor's investigation into her past was concerning. Would she tell Nicholas? And if she did, how would he react? Alaya pushed the worry aside. All she could do was continue to do her job well and be there for Emmett. The rest would have to take care of itself. The next morning brought a surprise. When Alaya entered the kitchen to start breakfast, she found Emmett already there sitting at the island. Even more surprising, he had Hannah's guitar propped awkwardly on his lap. Good morning, Emmett, Alaya said, trying to hide her shock. You're up early. Emmett plucked a string, then looked up at her expectantly. Understanding dawned. You want to play music? He nodded. Before breakfast? Alaya asked with a smile. Another nod, more emphatic. Well, I suppose we could have a little morning concert. Your grandmother is still asleep, I think. Alaya took the guitar gently and tuned it. Then she played a simple melody, humming along. After a moment, she added her beatbox sounds, which immediately brought that now familiar hint of a smile to Emmett's face. Your turn, she said, handing the guitar back. For the next 15 minutes, they took turns with the guitar, Alaya showing Emmett how to place his fingers for basic notes. His small hands struggled with the full-sized instrument, but he was determined, his focus intense. Alaya was so engrossed in their impromptu music lesson that she didn't notice Eleanor standing in the doorway until the older woman cleared her throat. What's going on here? Eleanor asked, her voice carefully neutral. Alaya froze, but Emmett surprised her by turning to his grandmother and holding up the guitar with a look that could only be described as proud. Eleanor's expression shifted from suspicion to wonder. Emmett, are you playing music? Emmett nodded, then plucked a string as if to demonstrate. Hannah's guitar, Eleanor said softly, moving into the kitchen. She would be so happy to see you with it. Something remarkable happened then. Emmett's face lit up, not just a hint of a smile, but a full, genuine smile that transformed his solemn features. It was as if Eleanor had given him the greatest gift just by mentioning his mother. Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. Oh, my sweet boy, you look just like her when you smile. Emmett set the guitar carefully on the counter, then did something even more unexpected. He walked to his grandmother and leaned against her side in a tentative hug. Eleanor looked stunned, then wrapped her arms around him, careful not to squeeze too tight. She met Alaya's eyes over Emmett's head, an unspoken acknowledgement passing between them. Perhaps, Eleanor said, her voice thick with emotion, we could all have breakfast together, in the kitchen, and then maybe Emmett could play a little more for me? Aliyah smiled. I think that sounds perfect. As she prepared breakfast, Aliyah marveled at the change in Eleanor. The woman who had been so critical yesterday was now sitting beside Emmett at the island, listening attentively as he showed her what he'd learned on the guitar. There were no demands for him to speak, no corrections of his posture, just a grandmother connecting with her grandson over something he loved. Maybe, Aliyah thought, there was hope for healing in this family after all. Nicholas returned from New York late on Saturday night. The house was quiet as he let himself in, not wanting to wake anyone. To his surprise, a light was still on in the kitchen. He found Aliyah there, making tea. "Oh, you're back," she said, looking up with a smile that did strange things to his pulse. "How was your trip?" "Productive," Nicholas said, setting down his briefcase. "How were things here? Did my mother give you a hard time?" Aliyah's smile turned thoughtful. "We had a bit of a rough start, but we reached an understanding. She loves Emmett very much." "That she does," Nicholas agreed, loosening his tie. "And Emmett, how was he?" "Why don't you ask him yourself in the morning? He's been looking forward to your return." Nicholas raised an eyebrow. "He told you that?" "Not in words," Aliyah said, "but he's been checking the window every half hour since dinner." The thought of Emmett waiting for him, wanting him home, filled Nicholas with warmth. "I missed him too, more than I expected. Would you like some tea?" Aliyah offered. "I was just making some for myself." "Thank you. That would be nice." As Aliyah prepared a second cup, Nicholas found himself studying her profile, the graceful line of her neck, the way her hands moved efficiently but never hurriedly. There was something soothing about her presence, a calm that seemed to permeate the spaces she occupied. "My mother mentioned that she looked into your background," Nicholas said after a moment. Aliyah's hands stilled briefly, then resumed their work. "Yes, she did. She told me about the lawsuit, the accident at your school." Aliyah turned to face him, her expression composed but vulnerable. "I should have told you myself, I'm sorry." "The agency disclosed it," Nicholas said, "but not in detail. My mother can be thorough when she wants information." "Are you concerned about my ability to care for Emmett?" Aliyah asked directly. Nicholas considered the question. "A month ago I might have been, but now," he shook his head. "I've seen how you are with him, how he responds to you. Whatever happened at that school, I don't believe it defines who you are as a caregiver." Relief washed over Aliyah's face. "Thank you for saying that. It means a lot. My mother also told me," Nicholas continued, "that you stood up for Emmett when she pushed him too hard, that you put his needs first even at the risk of upsetting her. Not many people stand up to Eleanor Trent." Aliyah handed him a cup of tea. "I believe children deserve advocates, even when it's uncomfortable." "Hannah used to say the same thing," Nicholas said softly. "She never hesitated to tell me when I was being too rigid with Emmett, too much like my mother." They sat in companionable silence for a moment, sipping their tea. There was something intimate about sharing the quiet kitchen late at night, both of them still dressed from the day, a little rumpled, a little tired. "Something else happened while you were gone," Aliyah said finally. "Something important." Nicholas set down his cup, suddenly alert. "What?" "Emmett has been spending time in the music room every day, playing Hannah's guitar. Well, trying to. It's too big for him, but he's determined." "He's shown interest in music?" Nicholas felt a surge of hope. Hannah had been so musical, always filling their home with song. Before her death, Emmett had been the same, always humming, always dancing. Aliyah nodded. "More than interest. It's like it connects him to her, to Hannah." "How do you know?" Nicholas asked, leaning forward. "Because he told me." Nicholas froze, certain he had misheard. "What did you say?" Aliyah's eyes were bright. "Not directly, but yesterday I found him sitting by the window in the music room watching the garden. I was outside earlier, singing while I pulled some weeds. Emmett pressed his hand to the glass and said, 'She's like Mama.'" Nicholas couldn't breathe. "He spoke? Emmett spoke?" "Yes." Then he said, "She sings when she's sad." I think he meant me, that I remind him of Hannah because we both sing when we're sad. Nicholas stood abruptly overwhelmed. "He spoke. After 2 years. He actually spoke." "He did," Aliyah confirmed, her own voice thick with emotion. "Just those 2 sentences, and he hasn't said anything else since. But Nicholas, he can speak. He chose to speak." Without thinking, Nicholas pulled Aliyah into a tight embrace, lifting her slightly off the ground in his excitement. "Thank you," he whispered against her hair. "Thank you for bringing him back to me." When he set her down, they were standing very close, his hands still on her waist, her palms resting lightly on his chest. For a moment, the air between them seemed charged with possibility. Then Alaya stepped back, a flush on her cheeks. It wasn't me, it was the music and his readiness. He just needed the right moment. Nicholas let his hands drop, suddenly aware of the inappropriate impulse he'd nearly acted on. Alaya was his employee, here to care for his son. Nothing more. Still, he said, clearing his throat, you created the environment where he felt safe enough to try. That's invaluable, Alaya smiled, though something in her eyes had become guarded. I'm glad I could help. I should get to bed. It's late. Of course. Good night, Alaya, and thank you for telling me. I can't wait to see him tomorrow. After she left, Nicholas remained in the kitchen, his mind racing with the implications of Emmett's breakthrough. His son had spoken, actual words, about his mother and about Alaya. She's like Mama. The comparison should have bothered him. Hannah had been his world, the love of his life. No one could replace her, especially not someone he barely knew. But instead, the words filled him with a strange hope. If Emmett saw something of Hannah in Alaya, something good, something comforting, maybe that was exactly what they both needed. As Nicholas finally headed to bed, he found himself looking forward to the morning with an anticipation he hadn't felt in years. Tomorrow he would see his son, and maybe, just maybe, he would hear his voice again. Alaya lay awake in her bed, replaying the moment Nicholas had embraced her. The solid warmth of him, the way his voice had broken with emotion, the scent of his cologne mixed with the faint staleness of travel. For just a heartbeat, she'd imagined what it would be like to turn her face up to his, to close the distance between them. Stop it, she whispered into the darkness. He's your employer, and he's still in love with his late wife. But the warning didn't stop the flutter in her chest, or the warmth that spread through her at the memory of his hands on her waist. Alaya rolled onto her side, trying to redirect her thoughts. This job was about Emmett, about helping a traumatized child find his voice again. It wasn't about developing inappropriate feelings for his handsome, grieving father. Besides, she reminded herself, she had her own wounds to heal. The lawsuit might be settled, but the scars it left on her confidence remained. She wasn't ready for any relationship, let alone one as complicated as this would be. Still, as sleep finally claimed her, Alaya couldn't help but remember the look in Nicholas's eyes when she told him Emmett had spoken, pure joy, mixed with something that looked remarkably like affection. Not for Emmett, for her. The next morning, Nicholas woke early, eager to see Emmett. He showered and dressed quickly, forgoing his usual Sunday routine of checking emails and news headlines before breakfast. When he entered the kitchen, he found Emmett already there, sitting at the island with a bowl of cereal. Alaya stood nearby, slicing fruit. "Good morning," Nicholas said, his eyes immediately going to his son. "Hi, buddy." Emmett looked up, his blue eyes widening at the sight of his father. He didn't speak, but he slid off his stool and walked straight to Nicholas, wrapping his arms around his father's waist in a hug. Nicholas felt his throat tighten with emotion. Emmett had been allowing more physical contact lately, but he rarely initiated it. Nicholas knelt down, returning the hug properly. "I missed you too," he said softly. Over Emmett's shoulder, he caught Alaya's eye. She was smiling, her own eyes suspiciously bright. "Alaya tells me you've been playing Mum's guitar," Nicholas said as Emmett stepped back. "Would you show me after breakfast?" Emmett nodded, a look of excitement crossing his face. "I need to get him a proper-sized instrument," Nicholas said to Alaya as he poured himself coffee. "Do they make guitars for children?" "They do," Alaya confirmed. "Quarter and half-size guitars designed for smaller hands. I could look into some options if you'd like." "Please do, cost isn't an issue." Eleanor entered the kitchen then, already dressed in one of her designer pantsuits despite the early hour. "Good morning, family. Nicholas, welcome home." Nicholas kissed his mother's cheek. "Good morning, Mother. Thank you for staying with Emmett. It's always my pleasure." Eleanor poured herself coffee, then added with unusual warmth, "We had quite a nice time, didn't we, Emmett? Especially our music sessions." Emmett nodded, returning to his cereal. Nicholas raised an eyebrow at his mother. "Music sessions, you hate modern music. Classical music is what I objected to you playing at ear-splitting volumes as a teenager," Eleanor corrected. "But yes, Emmett and I spent time in the music room. He has his mother's talent." The casual mention of Hannah, without the usual hint of disapproval Eleanor had always shown toward her daughter-in-law, surprised Nicholas. He glanced at Alaya, who gave a small shrug as if to say, "A lot happened while you were gone." After breakfast, as promised, Emmett led Nicholas to the music room. Eleanor excused herself to pack, and Elia began clearing the dishes, giving father and son privacy. In the music room, Emmett went straight to Hannah's guitar, carefully lifting it from its stand. He sat on the small sofa and positioned the instrument on his lap, his small fingers finding their places on the strings with determined concentration. Nicholas sat beside him, watching as Emmett plucked the strings one by one, creating a simple pattern of notes. It wasn't a song exactly, but it had rhythm and intention. "That's wonderful, Emmett," Nicholas said when he finished. "Mom would be so proud of you." Emmett looked up at him, his expression serious. For a moment Nicholas hoped he might speak again. But instead, Emmett pointed to the piano in the corner, then at Nicholas. "You want me to play?" Nicholas asked, surprised. He hadn't touched the piano since Hannah's death. It had been their thing. He would play, and she would sing. Emmett nodded emphatically. Nicholas hesitated, then moved to the piano bench. He ran his fingers over the keys, memories washing over him. Hannah sitting beside him, her voice filling the room. Emmett as a toddler, banging happily on the lower keys while they laughed. He began to play a simple melody, a lullaby he used to play for Emmett when he was a baby. The notes came back to him easily, muscle memory taking over. To his astonishment, Emmett began to hum along, softly at first, then with more confidence. The sound of his son's voice, even just humming, filled Nicholas with joy so intense it was almost painful. When the song ended, Nicholas turned to find Emmett standing right beside him, those solemn blue eyes fixed on his face. "Again?" Nicholas asked, his voice rough with emotion. Instead of nodding, Emmett said clearly, "Please, Daddy." Nicholas gasped. "Emmett, you spoke." Emmett nodded, looking somewhat surprised himself. "I remember this song," he added, the words coming slowly but distinctly. Nicholas pulled his son into a fierce hug, tears streaming down his face. "Yes, buddy. We used to play it for you every night, you remember." "Mama sang it," Emmett said into Nicholas's shoulder. "She did. She had the most beautiful voice." They stayed like that for a long moment, Nicholas holding his son, overwhelmed by the miracle of hearing his voice again after so long. Finally, Emmett pulled back. "Play again," he requested. Nicholas wiped his eyes and turned back to the piano. "As many times as you want, buddy. As many times as you want." Elia finished cleaning the kitchen, her heart full. She hadn't meant to eavesdrop, but she'd heard Emmett's clear voice asking his father to play again, followed by Nicholas's emotional reaction. She busied herself with laundry, wanting to give them space for this important moment, but she couldn't stop smiling. Emmett was speaking, not just one sentence, but carrying on a small conversation with his father. It was more progress than she'd dared to hope for. As she folded towels in the laundry room, Eleanor found her. "I finished packing," the older woman announced. "Nicholas will drive me home after lunch." "I hope you had a pleasant stay, Mrs. Trent," Elia said politely. Eleanor regarded her with that penetrating gaze. "I've been thinking about our conversation the other night, about the accident at your school." Elia stiffened slightly. "Yes? I believe I may have judged you unfairly," Eleanor said, surprising her. "Nicholas told me how you've been with Emmett, patient, respectful, giving him space when he needs it, but not treating him like he's broken. That's commendable." "Thank you," Elia said, genuinely touched. "Emmett makes it easy. He's an incredible child." "Yes, he is." Eleanor smoothed an imaginary wrinkle from her slacks. "I also owe you an apology for my behavior when I first arrived. I can be that protective of my family." "No apology needed," Elia assured her. "You love Emmett and want what's best for him. We have that in common." Eleanor nodded, a faint smile touching her lips. "Indeed we do. Which is why I need to ask, what are your intentions regarding my son?" The question caught Elia completely off guard. "I'm sorry?" "Nicholas, I've seen how he looks at you, and how you look at him when you think no one notices." Elia felt heat rise to her cheeks. "Mrs. Trent, I assure you, my relationship with your son is entirely professional." "Perhaps for now," Eleanor conceded. "But feelings rarely remain tidy, especially in situations like this. A handsome widower, a beautiful young woman, both caring deeply for the same child. It's practically a cliché." "I would never—" "I'm not accusing you of anything improper," Eleanor interrupted. "I'm simply acknowledging what I see developing, and I want to be clear. If your interest in Nicholas is simply because of his wealth or position—" "It's not," Elia said firmly, then immediately regretted confirming she had any interest at all. "That is, I respect Nicholas greatly as Emmett's father and my employer. Any other impression is mistaken." Eleanor studied her for a long moment. You know, I didn't approve when Nicholas married Hannah. I thought she was too bohemian, too free-spirited for my structured, ambitious son. I wasn't entirely wrong. They were very different. But what I failed to see was how those differences balanced him, made him more human. She paused, her gaze distant with memory. Hannah brought music and laughter into his life. After she died, all of that disappeared. The house became as silent as Emmett. Until recently, Elia said softly. Yes, until you arrived. Eleanor refocused on Elia. I'm not saying I approve. I'm saying I'm watching, and that I care more about my son and grandson being happy than about maintaining my own vision of what their lives should be. With that surprisingly vulnerable statement, Eleanor turned and left, leaving Elia staring after her, towels forgotten in her hands. After Eleanor departed, Nicholas spent the rest of the day with Emmett, playing piano whenever his son requested it, listening to the handful of words and short sentences Emmett offered. They were simple statements, observations about the music, memories of his mother, questions about when they could get a guitar his size. By evening, Nicholas was emotionally exhausted, but happier than he'd been in years. Emmett's speech was still limited, and the boy still had long periods of silence, but the dam had broken. His son was communicating again. After putting Emmett to bed, Nicholas found Elia in the living room, writing in a notebook. I didn't mean to disturb you, he said when she looked up. You're not disturbing me at all, Elia replied, closing the notebook. How was the rest of your day with Emmett? Nicholas sat in the armchair across from her, running a hand through his hair. Incredible. Overwhelming. He's speaking, Elia, not constantly, but he's trying after 2 years of nothing. That's wonderful, Elia said, her smile warm. He's been ready for a while, I think. He just needed the right motivation. The music, Nicholas agreed. It was the connection to Hannah he needed. He paused, studying her face. And you. You were the catalyst. Elia shook her head. I just happened to be here at the right time. No, Nicholas insisted. It wasn't coincidence. You created a safe space for him. You didn't pressure him. You followed his lead. He leaned forward. Do you know how many specialists I've hired who couldn't do what you did in just over a week? Emmett did the work, not me, Elia said. He's an amazingly resilient child. He is. But he also trusts you. Nicholas hesitated, then added, He told me today that you're teaching him to beatbox. Elia laughed, the sound light and genuine. I wouldn't say teaching. It's just something silly I do that makes him smile. He mentioned that you do it when you're happy, not sad. I think he was correcting his earlier statement. Smart kid, Elia said with another smile. I do beatbox when I'm happy. It's a bad habit from my teaching days. The kids always loved it. Emmett loves it too. Nicholas paused. My mother mentioned that you two reached an understanding while I was gone. Elia's expression turned more guarded. Yes, I think we did. She also said I should give you a raise. That clearly surprised her. She did? Nicholas nodded. She said you stood up for Emmett when it would have been easier to defer to her. She respects that, even if she didn't appreciate it in the moment. Your mother loves Emmett very much, Elia said diplomatically. She wants what's best for him. So do you, Nicholas observed, which is why I'd like to make a change to your position here. Elia tensed slightly. What kind of change? I'd like to formally add childcare for Emmett to your responsibilities, with appropriate compensation, of course. You've connected with him in a way none of the specialists have. Relief washed over Elia's face. I'd be honored. Emmett is special. He is, Nicholas agreed. There's something else I'd like to discuss. I found something while looking into smaller guitars for Emmett. He reached for his tablet on the side table and pulled up a website. There's a music therapy program for children with selective mutism at UCLA. It's a 6-week summer session, starting next month. I'd like to enroll Emmett, but what? Elia prompted when he hesitated. It's in Los Angeles. We'd need to stay there for the duration. Nicholas met her eyes. I'm asking if you'd be willing to come with us, to continue working with Emmett, and to help him adjust to the program. Elia looked stunned. You want me to come to Los Angeles with you? For 6 weeks? Yes, I've already spoken with the program director, and they're excited about Emmett's case. They rarely get children who've started speaking again after such a long period of mutism. They think they can help him continue to progress. That sounds like an amazing opportunity for him, Elia said. It would mean leaving your home here, living in a hotel or rental property in LA, Nicholas continued. I know it's a lot to ask, but Emmett trusts you. I think having you there would make the transition easier for him. Elia was quiet for a moment, considering. What about your work? Can you be away from the office that long? I can work remotely for much of it, and frankly, my company will survive if I'm not there every day. Emmett is my priority now. Alaya nodded slowly. In that case, yes. I'd be happy to come with you both to Los Angeles. For Emmett. Nicholas felt a disproportionate relief at her acceptance. Thank you. I'll make all the arrangements. As they discussed the logistics of the trip, Nicholas found himself watching Alaya, the animated way she spoke when excited, the thoughtful tilt of her head when considering options, the warmth in her eyes when Emmett was mentioned. His mother's parting words came back to him. That girl is good for both of you. Don't let your stubbornness or guilt get in the way of seeing that. At the time, he'd brushed off the comment, but now, sitting across from Alaya as they planned a 6-week stay in Los Angeles together, Nicholas had to admit there might be some truth to his mother's observation. 2 weeks later, Alaya stood on the balcony of a luxurious apartment in Santa Monica, watching the sunset over the Pacific Ocean. Behind her, inside the spacious living room, Nicholas was on a video call with his office, while Emmett built an elaborate structure with blocks on the plush carpet. The last 14 days had been a whirlwind. Nicholas had insisted on finding the perfect accommodations for their extended stay, a 3-bedroom apartment with ocean views, walking distance to the beach, and a short drive to UCLA, where Emmett's music therapy program would take place. Alaya had been given her own bedroom suite, complete with a sitting area and private bathroom. The apartment also had a music room where Nicholas had installed a baby grand piano and the child-sized guitar that had arrived just before they left Montecito. Emmett's speaking had continued to progress, though it was still inconsistent. Some days he chatted almost normally, asking questions and making observations. Other days, he retreated into silence, communicating only with nods and gestures. But even those silent days were different now. There was a communicativeness to his silence, not the flat withdrawal of before. The glass door behind Alaya slid open, and Nicholas joined her on the balcony, 2 glasses of wine in hand. "Emmett's watching a nature documentary," he said, handing her one of the glasses. "He's fascinated by the ocean life. I thought we might take him to the aquarium this weekend." "He'd love that," Alaya agreed, accepting the wine. "How was your call?" "Productive. The development team is making good progress on the new security protocols." Nicholas leaned against the railing beside her, their shoulders almost touching. "But I'd rather not talk about work right now." Alaya took a sip of her wine, an excellent Cabernet that probably cost more than she used to make in a week of teaching. "What would you like to talk about?" "You," Nicholas said simply. "I realize today that you've been with us for nearly a month, but I still know very little about you." Alaya raised an eyebrow. "What would you like to know?" "Everything," Nicholas said, then seemed to catch himself. "I mean, where did you grow up? Do you have siblings? What made you want to become a teacher?" Alaya smiled at his sudden interest. "I grew up in Trenton, New Jersey. I have one sister, Bree. She's a nurse. As for teaching, I always loved working with children. My mother was a preschool teacher, so I guess it runs in the family." "And your father?" "He was a jazz musician. Never made it big, but he played in clubs around New Jersey and New York. He taught me everything I know about music." "Ah, that explains the beatboxing," Nicholas said with a smile. "Is he still performing?" A shadow crossed Alaya's face. "No, he passed away when I was in college. Cancer." "I'm sorry," Nicholas said softly. "It was a long time ago," Alaya replied, "but I still miss him, especially when I'm playing music." Nicholas nodded in understanding. "That's how I feel about Hannah. Some days the grief is just a quiet ache. Other days it feels as fresh as when it happened." "Does it bother you?" Alaya asked carefully. "That Emmett associated me with her? Because of the singing?" Nicholas considered the question. "At first I was surprised, maybe a little jealous if I'm being honest, but now I think it's a good thing. Hannah would have wanted Emmett to have music in his life, to have people who care about him." Their eyes met, and something passed between them, an acknowledgement of shared understanding, of mutual care for Emmett, and perhaps something more. Nicholas cleared his throat and looked back at the ocean. "What about you? After everything with the lawsuit, do you think you'll go back to teaching someday?" Alaya sighed. "I don't know, I miss it terribly. Working with Emmett has reminded me why I loved teaching in the first place. But the fear is still there, the fear of failing another child." "You didn't fail that child," Nicholas said firmly. "Accidents happen, especially with kids. The lawsuit was about money, not your abilities as a teacher." "How do you know that?" Nicholas looked slightly embarrassed. "I may have had my legal team look into the case more thoroughly after my mother mentioned it." "You investigated me?" Elia wasn't sure whether to be offended or touched by his concern. Not you, specifically. The lawsuit. I wanted to understand what happened. He turned to face her fully. The child who was injured made a complete recovery. The parents sued because they saw an opportunity for a settlement from a well-funded school district. You were collateral damage. Elia felt tears prick her eyes. For a year she'd carried the weight of that accident, the guilt of a child being hurt on her watch. To hear Nicholas state so matter-of-factly that it wasn't her fault, it released something tight inside her chest. "Thank you," she whispered, "for telling me that." Nicholas reached out and brushed a tear from her cheek, his touch gentle. "You're an exceptional teacher, Elia. I've seen it with Emmett. If you want to go back to the classroom someday, you should." The warmth of his hand lingered on her skin. For a breathless moment, Elia thought he might lean closer. "Daddy? Elia?" Emmett's voice came from the doorway, breaking the spell. "The Sharks are on TV now." Nicholas dropped his hand, stepping back. "We're coming, buddy. Sharks are pretty cool, huh?" Emmett nodded enthusiastically. "Big teeth. Come see." As they followed Emmett inside, Elia's mind was spinning. The moment on the balcony had felt significant. A line almost crossed. She wasn't sure whether to be relieved or disappointed that Emmett had interrupted. One thing was certain. Her feelings for Nicholas Trent had grown far beyond professional respect, and based on the way he'd looked at her, touched her, she suspected he might feel the same. The question was, what were they going to do about it? Emmett's first day at the music therapy program went better than expected. The therapist, Dr. Reyes, was a warm, energetic woman who immediately connected with Emmett over their shared love of guitar. "He did wonderfully," she told Nicholas and Elia afterward. "He communicated verbally several times during our session, and his musical aptitude is remarkable for his age." "When will he speak normally again?" Nicholas asked, the question that had been weighing on him for 2 years. Dr. Reyes gave him a gentle smile. "Recovery from selective mutism isn't linear, Mr. Trent. Emmett has made incredible progress already. The fact that he's speaking at all after 2 years of complete silence is extraordinary." "But will he ever be like he was before?" Nicholas pressed. "Every child is different," Dr. Reyes said. "But I'm very optimistic about Emmett's case. The music is clearly a powerful tool for him. I'd like to see him 3 times a week, and I'll also give you exercises to do at home." As they drove back to the apartment, Emmett fell asleep in his car seat, tired from the emotional exertion of the day. "She didn't really answer my question," Nicholas said quietly to Elia, "about whether he'll fully recover." "I think she answered it the best way she could," Elia replied. "Recovery isn't a straight line, especially with emotional trauma. Emmett is making progress, that's what matters." Nicholas sighed. "You're right. I want him to have a normal childhood, to be happy." "He is happy," Elia assured him, "especially when he's making music with you. Have you noticed how he lights up when you play piano together?" Nicholas smiled at the observation. "He does, doesn't he? Just like Hannah used to." They fell into comfortable silence for the rest of the drive, both watching the sleeping child in the rearview mirror, both thinking about how far he'd come and how far he still had to go. Back at the apartment, Nicholas carried Emmett to his bedroom for a nap, while Elia prepared a light lunch. When Nicholas returned to the kitchen, his expression was troubled. "What's wrong?" Elia asked, setting down the knife she'd been using to slice tomatoes. "I just got an email from my assistant. There's a situation at work that requires my immediate attention. I need to fly back to San Francisco tomorrow." "Oh," Elia said, surprised. "For how long?" "A day, maybe 2. It's a security breach that could affect our government contracts. I have to be there in person." He ran a hand through his hair in frustration. The timing couldn't be worse. Emmett just started the program. "We'll be fine," Elia assured him. "I can take Emmett to his session tomorrow. He knows Dr. Reyes now, and he seemed comfortable with her." Nicholas looked unconvinced. "Are you sure?" "He's still adjusting to the new routine." "I'm positive. Emmett and I will have a good time while you're gone. Maybe we'll even visit that aquarium you mentioned." Nicholas visibly relaxed. "Thank you. I don't know what I'd do without you, Elia." The simple statement spoken with such sincerity made her heart skip. "That's what I'm here for. To help. It's more than that, and you know it." Nicholas's gaze was intense. "You've become important to us. To both of us." Elia didn't know how to respond to that. Important how? As Emmett's caretaker? As a friend to them both? Or something more? Before she could find the right words, Nicholas's phone rang. "I have to take this," he said, checking the screen. "It's the security team." As he stepped away to take the call, Elia returned to preparing lunch, her mind whirling with questions and possibilities. In just over a month, her life had changed dramatically. What had started as a simple housekeeping job had evolved into something much more complex and much more meaningful. She cared deeply for Emmett. That was undeniable and uncomplicated. But her feelings for Nicholas, those were neither simple nor appropriate for their professional relationship. Yet the way he looked at her sometimes, the way he'd touched her face on the balcony, it suggested he might be struggling with the same inappropriate attraction. Alaya placed the sandwiches on plates with a sigh. Nothing could happen between them. She was his employee, hired to care for his home and his son. Getting romantically involved would be a mistake. For her professionally, for him emotionally, and most importantly, for Emmett, who needed stability more than anything. No matter what she felt, no matter what Nicholas might feel, they had to keep their relationship professional, for Emmett's sake. Emmett woke from his nap just as lunch was ready. He came into the kitchen rubbing his eyes, his hair sticking up on one side. "Hey, sleepyhead," Alaya greeted him with a smile. "Hungry?" Emmett nodded, climbing onto a stool at the counter. "Where's Daddy?" "He's on a phone call for work. He'll join us soon." Emmett took a bite of his sandwich, then asked, "Do you like my dad?" The question caught Alaya completely off guard. "Of course I like your dad. He's a good person and a wonderful father." Emmett gave her a look that was surprisingly perceptive for a 6-year-old. "No. Do you like him?" Alaya felt her cheeks grow warm. "That's a complicated question, Emmett. Why? You smile a lot when he's around, and he looks at you all the time." "Does he?" Alaya couldn't help asking, then immediately regretted it. "I mean, your dad and I are friends. We both care about you very much." Emmett seemed to consider this. "Mom's gone forever. Dad is sad a lot, but not when you're here." The simple observation, delivered with a child's straightforward perception, left Alaya speechless. Before she could formulate a response, Nicholas returned to the kitchen. "Sorry about that," he said, taking a seat beside Emmett. "Crisis temporarily managed, but I still need to fly back tomorrow." "Everything okay?" Alaya asked, grateful for the change of subject. "It will be," Nicholas assured her. "Emmett, I need to go away for work tomorrow, just for a day or two. Alaya will take you to music therapy, and I'll be back before you know it." Emmett frowned. "I want you to stay." "I know, buddy, I want to stay too, but sometimes grown-ups have responsibilities they can't ignore." "Responsibilities," Emmett repeated, testing the word. "Like taking care of me?" "Exactly," Nicholas said, looking relieved at his son's understanding. "And sometimes taking care of you means I have to do my job, so we can have this nice place to live, and all the things we need." Emmett nodded solemnly. "Okay, but hurry back." "I promise," Nicholas said, ruffling his son's hair. "And when I get back, maybe we can all go to the beach together. Would you like that?" Emmett's face lit up. "Yes. Can I bring my guitar to the beach?" "I don't see why not," Nicholas said with a smile. "We could have a little beach concert." As they continued eating lunch, making plans for Nicholas's return, Alaya found herself watching them together, the progress in their relationship as remarkable as Emmett's progress with speech. Nicholas was more relaxed with his son now, less afraid of saying or doing the wrong thing, and Emmett was more expressive, more engaged. They were healing, both of them, and somehow, against all professional boundaries and better judgment, Alaya had become part of that healing process. The question was, when Emmett was fully recovered, when he no longer needed her support, what would happen then? Would Nicholas still look at her the way he did now? Would she still have a place in their lives, or would she simply become another specialist who had served her purpose and moved on? The thought hurt more than it should have, considering she'd only known them for a month. But the truth was undeniable. Somewhere along the way, Nicholas and Emmett Trent had become important to her too, very important, and the prospect of eventually leaving them behind made her heart ache in a way she hadn't experienced in a very long time. Nicholas's business trip stretched from 2 days into 4. A security breach in one of his company's government contracts had required his personal attention, forcing him to remain in San Francisco longer than planned. Each night he video-called Emmett and Alaya, his face tired, but his voice warm as he asked about their day and Emmett's therapy sessions. Emmett would excitedly show his father new guitar chords he'd learned, or tell him about the fish they'd seen at the aquarium. "I miss you, Daddy," Emmett said on the 4th night, his speech more fluent each day. "When are you coming home?" "Tomorrow afternoon, buddy. I promise. Nothing could keep me away any longer." After Emmett went to bed, Nicholas would talk privately with Alaya, getting more detailed updates on his son's progress. "Dr. Reyes says he's advancing faster than she expected," Alaya told him on their last evening apart. His speech is becoming more natural, and his confidence is growing daily. That's incredible, Nicholas said, the relief evident in his voice even through the screen. How are you holding up? I know this wasn't what you signed up for. Solo childcare for nearly a week. Alaya smiled. We're having a wonderful time, actually. Emmett is a joy to be with. We've established quite a nice routine. I'm glad to hear it, Nicholas replied, his expression softening. But I still feel like I'm taking advantage of your kindness. This goes far beyond your job description. I don't mind, Alaya assured him. Really? There was a pause. Then Nicholas said quietly, I've been thinking a lot while I've been away. About Emmett, about you, about our situation. Alaya's heart skipped. What about our situation? I think we need to talk when I get back about the future. The ambiguity of his statement left Alaya unsettled. Was he planning to end her employment now that Emmett was improving? Or was he referring to something more personal between them? Of course, she said, trying to keep her voice neutral. We can talk tomorrow. After they ended the call, Alaya sat on the balcony, watching the waves crash against the shore in the moonlight. She had grown to love these moments of reflection at the end of each day, the peaceful sound of the ocean, a backdrop to her thoughts. Being alone with Emmett for these days had only deepened her attachment to him. They had settled into a comfortable rhythm, breakfast together, morning practice on his guitar, therapy sessions at UCLA, afternoons exploring Los Angeles or playing on the beach, evenings reading stories and talking about his mother. Emmett spoke more openly about Hannah now, sharing memories that had been locked away during his years of silence. It seemed the music had not only restored his voice, but had reopened his connection to his mother in a healing way. Mama used to sing in the shower, he had told Alaya that morning as she helped him get dressed. Really loud. Daddy said the neighbors could hear her. She sounds like she was a lot of fun, Alaya had replied. Emmett had nodded. She was. You're fun too. Different but fun. The comparison no longer made Alaya uncomfortable. She didn't see herself as replacing Hannah in any way. No one could. But perhaps she was helping Emmett create a new type of joy in his life, one that honored his mother's memory while allowing him to move forward. Now, as she prepared for bed, Alaya wondered what Nicholas wanted to discuss tomorrow. Whatever it was, she needed to be prepared for any outcome, including the possibility that her time with the Trent family might be coming to an end. Nicholas's flight landed at noon the next day. He texted Alaya to let her know he was on his way home, a message that sent an unexpected flutter through her stomach. When had she started thinking of the Santa Monica apartment as home? Emmett was beside himself with excitement, checking the window every few minutes for his father's arrival. He had insisted on wearing his fancy clothes, a button-up shirt and khaki pants like his father often wore, and had practiced a new song to show Nicholas. Do you think Daddy will like my song? He asked Alaya for the third time that hour. He's going to love it, Alaya assured him. Your playing has improved so much. When they finally heard a key in the lock, Emmett ran to the door. Nicholas had barely stepped inside before his son launched himself into his arms. Daddy, you're back. Nicholas caught him, lifting him high. I sure am, buddy. I missed you so much. I missed you too. I learned a new song. And I saw sharks at the aquarium. And Dr. Reyes says I'm her best student ever. Nicholas laughed, his eyes bright with joy at his son's chattering. That's amazing, Emmett. I can't wait to hear all about it. Over Emmett's head, his eyes met Alaya's, who stood watching their reunion with a warm smile. Welcome home, she said simply. Something in his gaze made her breath catch, a mixture of gratitude, affection, and something deeper she couldn't quite name. It's good to be home, he replied, still holding Emmett, but his eyes on her. The rest of the afternoon was devoted to Emmett. He showed Nicholas his progress on the guitar, talking more than Nicholas had heard since before Hannah's death. They played piano together, had an early dinner, and then Nicholas gave Emmett his bath and read him 3 bedtime stories to make up for the nights he'd missed. By the time Emmett was asleep, it was nearly 9 o'clock. Nicholas found Alaya in the living room curled up with a book. He's finally out, Nicholas said, sinking onto the couch across from her. I think the excitement wore him out. He's been looking forward to your return all week, Alaya said, marking her place in the book and setting it aside. He even made a welcome home card for you. It's on your dresser. Nicholas smiled. I saw it. It's beautiful. He paused, studying her face. Thank you, Alaya, for everything you did while I was gone, for everything you've done since you came into our lives. It's my job, Alaya said, though they both knew it had become much more than that. About that, Nicholas said, leaning forward. That's what I wanted to discuss with you. Here it comes, Alaya thought, steeling herself. The gentle letdown, the kind dismissal now that Emmett was improving and didn't need her as much. I've been thinking about your contract, Nicholas continued, about your role in our lives. Alaya nodded, keeping her expression neutral. I understand. Emmett is making great progress. He probably won't need such intensive support for much longer. Nicholas looked confused. That's not what I was going to say at all. Actually, I was going to ask if you would consider a more permanent position with us. Permanent? Alaya repeated, surprised. Yes, as Emmett's primary caregiver and educational consultant. Even after his therapy program ends, even after we return to Montecito, I'd like you to stay with us, to continue being part of his life. Nicholas hesitated, then added, part of our lives. Relief washed over Alaya, followed immediately by a more complicated emotion. A permanent position meant security, meant continuing to be with Emmett, whom she'd grown to love. But it also meant continuing in this limbo with Nicholas, close but professional, always maintaining the appropriate distance despite whatever feelings might be developing between them. I'm honored, she said carefully, and I care deeply about Emmett. But, Nicholas prompted when she didn't continue. Alaya took a deep breath. But I think we need to be honest about what's happening here, Nicholas, between us. His eyes widened slightly, but he didn't pretend to misunderstand. I know. I've felt it too. It complicates things, Alaya said. If I stay on as Emmett's caregiver while we have feelings for each other, Nicholas finished for her. Yes, it would be complicated, but maybe there's another solution. What kind of solution? Nicholas stood up and moved to sit beside her on the couch, close enough that she could sense his warmth, but not so close as to invade her space. What if your role changed? What if you weren't my employee anymore? Alaya's heart sank. So he was letting her go after all. I see. No, you don't, Nicholas said with a soft laugh. I'm not explaining this well. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she'd come to recognize as a sign of nervousness. Alaya, in the short time you've been with us, you've transformed our lives. You've helped Emmett find his voice again. You've brought music back into our home. You've reminded me what it feels like to look forward to each day. He took her hand, his touch sending warmth up her arm. I'm not offering you a job. I'm asking if you'd consider being part of our family, not as an employee, but as what? Alaya asked, her voice barely above a whisper. As whatever we might become to each other, given the chance to explore these feelings without the complication of a professional relationship. Alaya stared at him, trying to process what he was saying. Are you firing me so you can date me? Nicholas laughed, the sound warm and genuine. When you put it that way, it sounds ridiculous, but essentially, yes. I can't in good conscience pursue a relationship with you while you're in my employ. It would be unethical, an abuse of power. So instead you want me to be unemployed? No, Nicholas said, squeezing her hand. I want you to be free to make a choice about us without your livelihood depending on it. I've spoken to Dr. Reyes at UCLA. She was incredibly impressed by your work with Emmett and your background in education. She mentioned that the music therapy program is looking for a teaching assistant with experience in both music and childhood development. Alaya blinked in surprise. You got me a job interview. I simply made an introduction, Nicholas clarified. Dr. Reyes already wanted to speak with you after seeing you work with Emmett. The position would start after our program ends if you're interested. And if I took this job, and what happens to us? To you and Emmett? Nicholas's eyes were serious. That would be up to you. If you wanted to explore what's developing between us, I would be very happy. If you preferred to maintain a friendship only, I would respect that too. Either way, you would still be part of Emmett's life, if that's what you want. Alaya felt overwhelmed by the possibilities suddenly opening before her. This is a lot to take in. I know, Nicholas acknowledged, and I don't expect an answer tonight. Take all the time you need to think about it. Alaya studied his face, the sincerity in his eyes, the nervous hope in his expression. In the weeks she'd known him, she'd watched him transform from a guarded, grief-stricken man into someone who was learning to open his heart again, and she'd been changed too, rediscovering her confidence, her passion for helping children. What does Emmett think about all this? She asked. Have you discussed it with him? Nicholas smiled. In a way. He asked me if I liked you. His words. Apparently he asked you the same question. Alaya felt her cheeks warm. He did. And what did you tell him? I told him it was complicated, Alaya admitted, which it is. It doesn't have to be, Nicholas said softly. Not if we're honest with each other, and with Emmett. He was right, Alaya realized. The situation only seemed complicated because they'd been trying to ignore their growing feelings, to maintain professional boundaries that their hearts had already crossed. I do care about you, Nicholas, she said finally. More than I should, given our current arrangement. And I love Emmett as if— She hesitated. As if he were your own, Nicholas finished. I've seen it in how you are with him. It's one of the things I admire most about you. Alaya took a deep breath. If I were to consider this teaching position, if we were to explore what's between us, I wouldn't want Emmett to be confused or hurt if things didn't work out. Neither would I, Nicholas agreed. Which is why we would take things slowly, be honest with him every step of the way. Emmett's well-being comes first for both of us. That shared priority reassured Alaya more than anything else could have. Whatever happened between her and Nicholas, they were united in their commitment to Emmett's happiness. I think, she said carefully, that I would like to meet with Dr. Reyes about the teaching position, and I think I would like to see where this might lead, between us. The smile that spread across Nicholas's face was like the sun breaking through clouds. Really? Alaya couldn't help but smile in return. Really? For a moment they simply looked at each other, the possibility of something new and beautiful opening between them. Then slowly Nicholas leaned forward. Alaya met him halfway, their lips touching in a kiss that was gentle and questioning at first, then deepening with the release of weeks of unspoken longing. When they finally pulled apart, Nicholas rested his forehead against hers. I've wanted to do that since the night you told me Emmett had spoken. That long? Alaya asked, smiling. Longer, if I'm being honest, Nicholas admitted, but that was when I finally admitted it to myself. Their second kiss was interrupted by a small voice from the hallway. Are you and Alaya having a sleepover? They jumped apart to find Emmett standing there in his pajamas, teddy bear in hand, watching them with curious eyes. Emmett, Nicholas said, his voice slightly higher than normal. What are you doing up, buddy? I had a dream about Mama, Emmett said, coming into the room. She was playing music with angels. Nicholas held out his arms, and Emmett climbed onto his lap. Was it a good dream or a scary dream? Good, Emmett said. But I woke up and wanted to tell you. I'm glad you did, Nicholas said, stroking his son's hair. Dreams about Mom are special. Emmett looked between them, his expression thoughtful. Were you kissing Alaya? Alaya felt her face flush, but Nicholas answered calmly. Yes, I was. Is that okay with you? Emmett considered this seriously. Does that mean Alaya is your girlfriend now? Nicholas glanced at Alaya, a question in his eyes. She gave a small nod. We're going to spend time together and see if that's what we both want, Nicholas explained. Would you like it if Alaya was part of our family? She already is part of our family, Emmett said, with the simple clarity of a child. She's my music lady. Alaya felt tears spring to her eyes at the easy acceptance in his voice. And you're my favorite music student, she said, touching his cheek gently. Emmett yawned, leaning against his father's chest. Can Alaya help tuck me in again? Of course, Nicholas said, standing with Emmett in his arms. Let's all go. As they walked back to Emmett's bedroom together, Alaya felt a sense of rightness, of belonging. This wasn't what she had expected when she took the housekeeping job in Montecito. It was so much more. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of therapy sessions, beach outings, and music. Emmett continued to make remarkable progress, his speech becoming more fluid, his confidence growing. Nicholas and Alaya navigated the early days of their relationship with care, mindful of Emmett's presence and the transition they were all experiencing. Alaya met with Dr. Reyes about the teaching position and was offered the job on the spot. She would start in the fall, working with children who used music therapy to overcome various challenges, including selective mutism. It feels like everything is coming full circle, she told Nicholas, as they walked along the beach one evening, watching Emmett run ahead of them, chasing seagulls. A year ago I thought my teaching career was over. Now I'm starting a new chapter that combines everything I love, music, teaching, and helping children find their voices. Nicholas took her hand, their fingers intertwining naturally now. You were meant for this work, just as you were meant to come into our lives when you did. Do you really believe that? Alaya asked. That things happen for a reason? Nicholas was quiet for a moment, watching his son. I didn't used to. After Hannah died, I couldn't see any reason, any purpose in what happened. It just seemed cruel and random. And now I think that sometimes beauty can grow from the darkest places. He squeezed her hand. Hannah's death was the worst thing that ever happened to us. But without that loss, without Emmett's silence, without all the pain we went through, you wouldn't be here with us now. Alaya leaned her head against his shoulder as they walked. I wish I could have known her. She would have liked you, Nicholas said with certainty. You're different in many ways, but you share the same genuine spirit, the same ability to see the person Emmett truly is beneath his struggles. Ahead of them, Emmett had stopped chasing birds and was now building something in the sand. They walked toward him, curious. What are you making, buddy? Nicholas asked. Emmett looked up with a smile. A sand piano. Look, these are the keys. He had drawn lines in the wet sand, creating a keyboard shape. Nicholas knelt beside him, pretending to play the sand piano, making Emmett giggle. Play something, Daddy. Nicholas moved his fingers over the sand keys, humming a melody. Emmett joined in, their voices blending together in the simple tune. Then Emmett looked up at Alaya. Your turn, music lady. Alaya knelt on Emmett's other side, adding her voice to theirs. As the three of them played the sand piano together, singing under the setting sun, Alaya felt a completeness she had never experienced before. This was what family felt like. Not perfect, not without complications or challenges ahead, but whole, connected, safe. Later that night, after Emmett was asleep, Nicholas and Alaya sat on the balcony, watching the stars appear over the ocean. I got a call from my mother today, Nicholas said. She wants to visit next week before we head back to Montecito. How did she react to the news about us? Alaya asked. They had told Eleanor about their relationship change a week earlier. Nicholas smiled. She said, and I quote, "It's about time you figured out what was right in front of you." Alaya laughed. She knew before we did, didn't she? Apparently so. She also said she's looking forward to having another musician in the family. I think she's already planning holiday recitals with you and Emmett. The casual mention of future holidays together made Alaya's heart swell. I'd like that. Nicholas turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. I know we agreed to take things slowly, and I still think that's wise. But I want you to know, I'm in this for the long haul, Alaya. What I feel for you isn't temporary or casual. I feel the same way, Alaya said softly. I love Emmett, and I'm falling in love with you, Nicholas. The words, spoken aloud for the first time, hung in the air between them. Nicholas's eyes darkened with emotion. I'm falling in love with you too, he said, his voice husky, and it doesn't frighten me the way I thought it would. Loving again after Hannah, I thought it would feel like a betrayal, but it doesn't. It feels like healing. Alaya leaned forward, kissing him tenderly. We'll continue to heal together, all three of us. From inside the apartment, they heard a sound, Emmett's voice, calling out from his bedroom. They rose together, going to check on him. Emmett was sitting up in bed, rubbing his eyes. I heard music, he said sleepily. In your dream? Nicholas asked, sitting on the edge of the bed. Emmett nodded. Mama was singing, and you were playing piano, and Alaya was there too. Alaya sat on his other side. That sounds like a beautiful dream. It was, Emmett said, settling back against his pillows. Mama said she's happy we're not sad anymore. Nicholas and Alaya exchanged a glance over Emmett's head, both moved by the child's dream. I think she would be happy about that, Nicholas agreed, his voice thick with emotion. As they tucked Emmett back in, his eyes already growing heavy with sleep, he murmured, I love you, Daddy. I love you, Alaya. We love you too, Emmett, they replied in unison. Hand in hand, they tiptoed from the room, leaving the door slightly ajar. In the hallway, Nicholas pulled Alaya close, holding her against his chest. Thank you, he whispered into her hair. For what? She asked, looking up at him. For everything. For helping Emmett find his voice again. For helping me remember how to listen. For bringing music back into our lives. Alaya smiled, touching his face gently. You did the same for me. You helped me find my purpose again, my confidence. You reminded me who I am. As they stood there in the quiet hallway, the sound of Emmett's peaceful breathing just audible from his room, Alaya knew they had all been transformed by their time together. What had begun as a moment that broke the silence had become so much more. A new beginning, a second chance, a family rebuilt from the fragments of loss and found in the healing power of love. Whatever comes next, Nicholas said softly, we'll face it together. Together, Alaya agreed, sealing the promise with a kiss. Outside, the waves continued their eternal rhythm against the shore, a natural music that spoke of endings and beginnings, of loss and renewal, of silence broken and hearts mended by the courage to love again. The end,